At 88, Max Baer Jr. finally talks. About Nancy Kulp. Max Baer Jr. was born Maximilian Adelbert Baer Jr. on December 4, 1937 in Oakland, California. Max Baer Jr. was practically born into legend. His father, Max Baer Sr., was the world heavyweight boxing champion from 1934 to 1935, a charismatic and controversial sports figure whose fame was huge and affected the family name. Growing up in the shadow of such a powerful personality shaped Baer Jr.'s early life, giving him both confidence and a deep understanding of the pressures that come with public attention. Athletic, handsome, and naturally charismatic, Baer Jr. initially seemed destined for stardom. He attended Santa Clara University where he studied philosophy and was great at sports including golf and boxing, though he never went after athletics professionally. Instead, he moved toward acting, drawn by the creative possibilities of film and television during the industry's post-war boom. Hollywood in the late 1950s was hungry for young talent, and Baer Jr. fit the mold perfectly. His early acting career consisted of small but steady roles in television series such as 77 Sunset Strip, Hawaiian Eye, and Cheyenne. These appearances showed off his screen presence, but it was in 1962 that fate stepped in a way that would define and complicate his entire career. Baer Jr. was cast as Jethro Bodine on the Beverly Hillbillies, a broad comedy about a rural family suddenly thrust into wealth and Beverly Hills society. As Jethro, Baer created one of television's most recognizable characters, the lovable, dim-witted, overconfident young man whose mispronunciations, physical comedy, and exaggerated swagger became a defining element of the show's success. The Beverly Hillbillies was a cultural phenomenon. At its peak, it ranked as the #1 television program in America, drawing tens of millions of viewers each week. Baer Jr.'s performance was central to its appeal. His timing, physicality, and commitment to the role lifted Jethro from a simple stereotype into a character audiences adored. Yet, the very success of the role would become a double-edged sword. Typecasting quickly followed, and Baer Jr. found himself struggling to be seen as anything other than Jethro Bodine. When the Beverly Hillbillies ended in 1971 after 9 seasons, Baer Jr. faced the harsh reality many television stars encounter. Escaping an iconic role can be harder than landing it. Casting directors hesitated to place him in serious or dramatically different parts, fearing audiences would never separate the actor from the character. Despite his talent and ambition, Hollywood doors began to close. Rather than give up to frustration, Baer Jr. reinvented himself, showing remarkable foresight and business smarts. He turned to producing and directing, carving out a second career behind the camera. In the 1970s, he founded his own production company and began making low-budget films that proved surprisingly profitable. His most notable success came with Macon County Line 1974, a gritty exploitation film inspired by true events. Produced on a modest budget, the film became a box office hit, earning millions and solidifying Baer Jr.'s reputation as a savvy independent filmmaker. By the mid-1970s, Max Baer Jr. was determined to prove that his creative ambitions stretched far beyond the small screen and the shadow of his iconic television persona. In 1975, he took a bold and deeply personal leap into film, making, producing, writing, and directing The Wild McCulloch, a gritty Southern drama that marked his arrival. As a serious auteur, Baer didn't just remain behind the camera. He stepped into the story itself, portraying the complex character of Culver Robinson, a role that allowed him to explore darker, more nuanced emotional territory than audiences had ever seen from him before. The film stood as a declaration of independence, signaling that Baer was ready to take full control of his creative destiny. That determination paid off the following year when Baer directed and produced Ode to Billie Joe, 1976, an adaptation of Bobby Gentry's haunting hit song. The film struck a powerful chord with audiences, becoming a major commercial success and cementing Baer's credibility as a filmmaker with both artistic sensitivity and box office appeal. Its success elevated his reputation in Hollywood and demonstrated that he possessed a keen instinct for storytelling that resonated on a national scale. Although Baer would step behind the camera only once more, directing the 1979 film Hometown USA, Ode to Billie Joe remained the crowning achievement of his directorial career, often cited as the moment he truly broke free from typecasting. Following his years in filmmaking, Baer turned his attention to the business world with the same ambition and vision that had driven his creative pursuits. He became a savvy investor in real estate and the casino industry, carving out a second career that proved just as bold as his Hollywood ventures, fueled by a mix of nostalgia and entrepreneurial imagination. Baer set his sights on building a full-scale Beverly Hillbillies empire, an ambitious project that would transform the beloved television series into a living, breathing brand. Central to this vision were plans for attractions such as Jethro's Beverly Hills mansion and themed casinos inspired by the legendary show that made him a household name, a move that underscored both his business acumen and enduring connection to the series. Baer reportedly secured a deal with network authorities, granting him the rights to use the show's names, characters, and iconic details. With those rights in hand, he positioned himself to turn television history into a lasting commercial legacy. More than a former sitcom star, Max Baer Jr. emerged as a multifaceted figure, filmmaker, entrepreneur, and visionary who consistently reinvented himself while honoring the cultural phenomenon that first captured America's imagination. Despite his business success, Baer Jr.'s relationship with the Beverly Hillbillies remained complicated. For decades, he openly expressed frustration over how the show limited his acting opportunities. Yet over time his perspective softened. He came to recognize the profound joy the series brought to audiences and the cultural imprint it left behind. Jethro Bodine, once a burden, became a badge of honor, an immortal character in television history. In his later years, Baer Jr. became increasingly private, stepping away from the public eye while remaining engaged in creative projects and business ventures. He also pursued legal battles over the use of his likeness, particularly in connection with Jethro-inspired casino slot machines, reflecting his determination to protect his legacy and intellectual rights. In 2014, Max Baer Jr. stepped back into the spotlight, not as an actor, but as a determined businessman ready to defend a vision he had been nurturing for decades. That year, he filed a high-profile lawsuit against CBS, claiming that the network had quietly entered into a secret agreement with a Des Moines-based restaurant chain, Jethro's Barbecue, a move Baer claimed directly undermined his long-planned ambitions tied to the Beverly Hillbillies. To Baer, this was not merely a dispute over branding or licensing. It was a battle over creative ownership, legacy, and the right to benefit from a character he had helped make iconic. According to the lawsuit, Baer asserted that as far back as 1991, he had negotiated an understanding with CBS, granting him the rights to use the fictional character of Jethro Bodine along with other recognizable names, themes, and motifs from the beloved television series for an ambitious business empire. His plan went far beyond a novelty restaurant. Baer envisioned a sprawling, entertainment-driven brand that would include themed restaurants, luxury hotels, and even casinos, all drawing on the enduring popularity and nostalgic appeal of the Beverly Hillbillies. It was, in his mind, a natural extension of a cultural phenomenon that had never truly faded from the public imagination. Baer argued that CBS's alleged deal with Jethro's Barbecue not only watered down the value of those rights but also threatened to derail years of preparation, investment, and negotiations on his part by allowing another business to trade on the Jethro name without his involvement. Baer claimed the network had effectively blocked his ability to cash in on the character that had defined his career and remained deeply associated with his public identity. The lawsuit painted a picture of a man who had patiently waited for the right moment to bring his vision to life, only to discover that the ground beneath him had shifted in secret. He remained deeply and steadfastly connected to Buddy Ebsen long after the cameras stopped rolling, a friendship that endured for decades and was rooted in genuine affection, mutual respect, and shared history in the golden age of television. Their bond was so strong that even in Ebsen's final days, it never wavered. Just before his acting mentor and longtime friend passed away from pneumonia on July 6, 2003, he made a heartfelt visit to Ebsen's hospital bedside accompanied by Donna Douglas. That quiet, emotional moment, away from the spotlight, stood as a powerful testament to a friendship that had transcended fame, contracts, and time itself. It was not a public gesture, but a private farewell marked by gratitude, loyalty, and the unspoken understanding that comes only from years of shared experiences and deep personal connection. Yet, the later chapters of his life would be overshadowed by a far darker and more tragic event. In January 2008, his world was shaken by an unimaginable loss when his live-in girlfriend, 30-year-old penthouse model Cher Rhodes, was found dead in his Lake Tahoe home in an apparent suicide. The stark contrast between her youth and his age, he was 70 at the time, only intensified the public shock surrounding the tragedy. In a suicide note left behind, Rhodes alluded to relationship problems, a brief but haunting phrase that sparked widespread speculation and cast a somber light on what had been a deeply private relationship. The incident drew intense media attention, transforming personal grief into public scrutiny and marking one of the most painful and controversial moments of his later life. Together, these two moments, one defined by loyalty and enduring friendship, the other by loss and heartbreak, frame a poignant portrait of a life touched by both profound connection and devastating sorrow. At 88 years old, Max Baer Jr. has reached a point in life where silence feels heavier than truth. For decades, he rarely spoke publicly about his complicated relationship with Nancy Kulp, the actress who played Miss Jane Hathaway on the Beverly Hillbillies and helped make the show one of the most beloved sitcoms in television history. While fans saw only effortless chemistry, and warm comedic timing on screen, the reality behind the scenes was far more complex, marked by misunderstandings, hurt feelings, and years of unresolved tension. Looking back now, Baer admits that time has softened his perspective. When you're young and caught up in the momentum of success, you don't always understand how deeply words or silences can affect someone, he reflects. Nancy was an extraordinary woman, and I don't think I appreciated that enough while we were working together. Baer has long been associated with his role as Jethro Bodine, the lovable but dim-witted cousin, whose exaggerated physical comedy became a defining element of the show. Kulp, by contrast, brought intelligence, precision, and discipline to her portrayal of Jane Hathaway. Off-screen, those differences often created distance. Nancy took the craft very seriously. Baer says she had an academic mind and she expected professionalism at every level. I was more instinctive, more playful. Sometimes those worlds didn't meet. Rumors of animosity between the two actors circulated for years, fueled by Kulp's public statements in later life, suggesting she felt dismissed or disrespected. Baer now acknowledges that those feelings were real. I never hated Nancy, he says firmly, but I can see now how she might have felt isolated. The show leaned heavily into broad comedy, and I benefited from that. Carried herself with dignity, and sometimes that dignity was misunderstood. One of the most painful chapters in their relationship came after the Beverly Hillbillies ended. Kulp struggled to escape typecasting and eventually left acting behind while Baer remained closely identified with Jethro. 4 decades. Success is strange, Baer reflects. It gives you everything and takes things away at the same time. I didn't realize how much the aftermath of the show weighed on her. In her later years, Kulp became politically active and outspoken, traits that further distanced her from the nostalgic image fans held of Miss Hathaway. Baer admits he didn't reach out when he should have. That's something I regret, he says. There are moments in life when picking up the phone can change everything. Didn't do that. Now with the clarity that only age can provide, Baer speaks. Not with defensiveness but with humility. Nancy deserved respect for her intelligence, her talent, and her commitment to being more than just a sitcom character, he says. If I could say anything to her now, it would be, thank you. She helped create something that still brings joy to millions. 88. Max Baer Jr. understands that legacies are not just built on laughter, but on honesty. By finally speaking openly about Nancy Kulp, he offers a more complete picture, one that honors both the magic they created together and the human imperfections that existed behind the scenes.